Hello. 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 It's on. Is it working? Hello.
Hey, thanks
Hello.
for coming to the second meetup of the year. Appreciate that, Beer SEO. Hey, keep the clapping going because we want to wish this guy a happy birthday.
Thank you.
As you guys know, we've been trying to build up a community here. A little bit of a technical, a little bit more so than some of the other meetups. Not that there's anything wrong with their meetups, but we hope to continue to grow the organization, try to bring in some really fantastic speakers, James being one of them from IBM. He is the technical SEO manager there, and I'll talk to you guys about what he's going to be discussing in just a few. Oh, you already gave it away. We also want to send out a big thank you to our sponsors, Go Fish Digital and Adapt Partners. We really couldn't do this without them, and they're going to help us bring free beer and free food to all of the future events. Hey, let's give them a applause.
Woo!
No, I said in the future. We're sorting out the details. Thank you. But upcoming events, we're going to have next month Russ Jones from Moz. He's the senior search science. Senior principal.
Yeah, principal search science.
But nobody can hear me online, so it's okay.
So you ready for this? Wait, hold on.
Oh, you can. Oh, thanks a lot. The month after that, we have J.P. Sherman from Red Hat. He's going to be speaking as well. So, again, I really appreciate you guys coming out. James is going to be talking about redirects. Now, I don't have to explain to you guys the importance of that, but he definitely has some tools and some ways to be able to work with redirects on a very large scale. And on that note, you're the one with the microphone. I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right. So I decided to talk about redirects because recently at IBM I've been working a lot on trying to redo a lot of the redirects across IBM. And the benefit of redirects is links. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. Basically, if you have a page on your website that 404s, a lot of the links that are going to that website, everything okay with the audio?
Yeah, we're good.
Oh, okay.
Shut off the music.
Gotcha.
We'd rather hear you.
Yeah, so basically if you have pages that 404, a lot of the links that goes to those pages are being wasted, so you want to redirect them to other pages. So an overview for this talk, I'm going to be talking about finding URLs with backlinks. So we want to focus on redirecting pages that already have links going to them. And then we want to find the best page to redirect that link to. And then we're going to implement redirects in an organized and manageable way. So the reason we want to find URLs with backlinks is because really it's not much use to redirect pages that don't have backlinks, and you want to keep your list of redirects manageable so that you can update them in the future when URLs change and things like that. So I prefer to use Ahrefs. There's a lot of different sources of backlink data that you could use, but this is the easiest one that I found. So what I do, go to Pages, Best by Links, and then it'll give you a list of pages within a specific directory that have links going to them. And it'll tell you the number of links, it'll tell you the referring domains. So you can use a lot of that data to compare which URLs you want to redirect. And then you can export them and go to an Excel spreadsheet. The second method is using the Ahrefs API. So normally if you use the Ahrefs API, you have to pay a lot of money through a subscription to their API. But if you use an Excel extension called SEO Tools for Excel, you can indirectly access their API. And it gives you a lot more ways to filter through that data than are available through their interface. So for instance, I needed to pull a certain directory across all subdomains. So I was able to do that through the SEO Tools for Excel extension, while I couldn't do that through their interface. using substring URL and then a specific part of the URL and export everything across all of the subdomains for a specific folder. And there's a lot of different filters you could use for that. So if you have different needs for finding URLs with backlinks, you can use this solution. Third method, shout out to Patrick Stocks. He wrote a great article on Search Engine Land for finding historical redirects to the Wayback Machine API. So basically crawling all of the old versions of URLs with Screaming Frog, which is a scraping tool, and that allows you to export all versions of old URLs on your website, and then you can just redirect those. So if you have a website where you don't have a lot of old versions of URLs, that's probably a better way to do it than signing up for paid tools. This can be a great free method because Screaming Frog has a free version, and archive.org is free. So then you need to clean your list of URLs once you have all of the URLs that you want to redirect, because you're going to get a lot of different versions of the same URLs, and you want to organize them in a way that makes it easier to write redirect rules to redirect those. And also, you generally, depending on your needs, you might want to only redirect 404 pages. For some of the stuff I've been working on, we're kind of checking all of the URLs and redirecting pages that we don't think we need anymore. But generally, you only want to redirect 404s, unless you want to check over your current redirects. So you can filter through your URLs that way using Excel. So you can use SEO tools for Excel, which is an Excel extension to crawl a lot of those URLs and find that. They have some great functions for finding canonical links, for finding the response codes of URLs, or you can use something like Screaming Frog, which is a program that just crawls them all for you. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about automating this process. So for bigger websites, you might not want to check manually every single URL you're redirecting for. So the main process is you basically want to find the topic of the page from the old URL. So if you have an old URL that doesn't exist anymore, you need to check what that page was about. Sometimes it might not be obvious from the URL itself. And then you want to find the most relevant page to redirect to. So the way I have been doing this is using the Wayback Machine. So it's basically an archive of old versions of your website. And generally the manual way of doing that is going on their website, typing in the URL, finding the version of the URL that you want to redirect to. But I found some ways using Google Sheets and Excel to kind of automate that process and find the URLs for those old versions of the page, to find what your old page was about. So this is basically a custom function in Google Sheets, get Wayback H1. So it's getting the old URL from the Wayback Machine and pulling the H1 tag. So I use that because generally it's the best way to find the topic of the page if you have optimized your H1 tags in the past, but there are other ways you could do that. So Google Sheets makes it really easy because they have Google Scripts, which is basically just JavaScript. So you can really easily make custom functions in Google Sheets to interact with other APIs. They have a class URL fetch app for fetching content from websites, and then you can use regex pretty easily to extract information from those old pages that you're pulling.
Do they have anything they don't have any DOM parsing in Google Sheets, do they? Is it all through regex?
Yeah, I just used regex,
Okay.
but I didn't see any DOM parsing. So you can also do it in Excel VBA. It's a little more complicated and not as clean, but I did the same thing there. Created a function, HTML H1 that, as well as get archived URL. So as you can see, it's a lot more code because it's. I played around with that last night. It was a lot more frustrating than trying to write it in Google Sheets, but you can do it if you.
And the funny thing is the only reason that you did it was for that slide.
Exactly.
So you never ever do it again.
Honestly, I was like, I've never used Excel VBA or made custom Excel functions before. I want to try it. I mean,
It's a real user agent? I just want to know.
I mean, if it's there, it's a real user agent. So, yeah. So, basically, what this does, the Wayback Machine has an API for scraping all of the old URLs that exist in their inventory. So first, you have to query their API to find the list of URLs, and then you take the first URL and you construct a URL for that old version of the page. And then you run that through regex to find the h1 tag. So then what I do with that, once I have the topic of the page, you can plug that into Google search to find the most relevant page on your website for that term. So Google has a custom search JSON API, and basically it's free for up to 100 queries, and then $5 for 1,000 queries. The first time I tried to use it, it actually had a bug where it was randomly showing different results, so I had to go to them and report it, and then they finally fixed it. So basically what I'm doing is taking the h1 tag from the Wayback Machine h1 tag, and then searching Google and finding the top page for my website. And that's a really quick way that you can automate mapping your redirects and figuring out which page you should be redirecting to without having to manually check which URL you want to go to. And this is the this is the function I use for doing that. So as you can see, again, Google Sheets, a lot less code and much simpler to implement.
When you map that, like, I guess at IBM, like, you could have, like, content that's 5 years old, right, that used to live on IBM, but that maybe now lives on some, I don't know, I'm sure this isn't right, or anywhere near right, but like cognitive or like machinelearning.ibm.com, or maybe some other brand domain, or maybe a company that IBM acquired that used to be on pluralsoftware.com and is now either IBM or one of the. Did you look at? I guess this. I mean, I understand this from a domain standpoint of looking at historical, but have you ever looked at it from like cross-domain standpoint?
So you would be able to do that with the custom search API. Basically, you have to go into their interface and set up a custom search engine.
Yeah.
So within that, you can specify which other properties you want it to be able to query. So for mine, I did all subdomains and any subfolders across IBM.com. Yeah.
Okay.
But you can add multiple levels to that, so you can add multiple websites you wanted to search across.
Okay.
Quick question. So, but you said you were doing this for other than 404s as well. So what did some of your original URLs return in the custom search?
Yeah, exactly. So that's something you could add custom logic to if you wanted to check if the URL equals the same URL that you're redirecting from, then yeah, it's not a URL you want to redirect, obviously. But
And the intent here is to get to what is the top site search for that particular.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this is the Excel version of that. You take your URL, and for me, I do a lot of manual checking, so I like to have the actual archived URL there, just in case I want to check. And then the h1 tag. And this is the VBA version of that.
Is that VBA
No, I can add it though. Wait, am I going the right way?
I think you are now.
Okay.
I think you're pointing at the TV, but maybe you should point at.
I mean, it's Bluetooth, so.
Yeah, this is where you're taking the H1 from way back and running it through custom search.
You're
Yeah.
back
To
to
grab
slides
the,
from where you
yeah,
were.
I think you just restarted.
Okay.
Unless you want to talk about it all again.
Okay, yeah. I was really confused why the wrong slides were showing up. All right. So, yeah, so this is the Google Sheets code. No, this is not. This is the VBA code. Just kidding. And JR wants to look at it.
I do.
Memorize it. Wait, I'm not taking pictures. I assume these slides are available later.
We'll make them available, yes.
Okay.
We'll steal all of his code.
I feel stressed about this. Where is the screenshot?
I think it's in an infinite loop.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so this is basically if you wanted to modify it, you can, change it however you want. This is a function that just gets the Wayback URL for Google Sheets. And I mean, the thing I like about this, it's like 5 lines of code. You can make custom functions, things that you would need something like SEO tools for Excel or other extensions to do. But if you're using Google Sheets, you can just paste this in. It's only a few steps to do. Just that's something I would definitely recommend looking into if you haven't played around with it before. Google Scripts, a lot easier than doing it in Excel. And if you wanted, you could integrate other ways of finding the topics of the page. The custom search API was the easiest one for me to do. But if you have experience, JR, you could.
I wonder, like Russ Jones did a plugin for SEO, like it was probably been 10 years ago now.
Are you about to just poke some shit about Lizzie rank? Is that where this is going? It's not in topic?
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with that. It's Levenstein. It's like that.
okay.
That's where I learned about Russ Jones because he made this plugin for Wordpress that if a request came in for a certain path and it WordPress was going to return a 404, it would say no, don't return a 404. Let me search the database to see.
It basically ran like mod spell, used Levenstein distance for closest slug.
Exactly. It looked through all the
It
slugs
parsed
in the
out
database, and then if there was
basically
something,
parsing out the Z word.
yeah, if there was something that was
exactly.
Fuzzy bags.
Oh, yeah.
It was 80% close from a Levenstein distance standpoint, then it would return that as the page. I'm just wondering, did you try any other like Levenstein just looks at the number of positional changes that it takes to transform one string to another string?
So the problem I see with that is it doesn't really take into account links going to the page or the top ranking page.
I'm just saying for, like, if you were to pull I don't know how many URLs from the sitemap for IBM.
Yeah.
There are quite a few. But, like, could you pull, like, a list of all the URLs just for, like, trying to get the one that's closest? I mean, if you can't or don't want or can't, like, query the Google search engine, did you try any other kind of relevancy matches, I guess?
No, I haven't tried anything else. This is the main thing I use, just because with IBM, I really want to use something that's tied to links or tied to a search engine because they have a lot of old content that's still indexed, so there's a high likelihood that it would match something that's not, the best page that should be ranking, even if the content is technically better.
Yeah.
I think what you're looking for is like, in a lot of cases, like it's a lot more straightforward. You might be able to go like by the URL itself, like there might be some identifying pattern there
Right.
that makes it easy. Or if you want to get more fancy, you could do like a TF-IDF vectorization process or something to like map it out. But in our case, it's a lot more messy than a standard website.
Yeah,
I would say.
Did you try, on that same vein, did you try just looking, pulling from Search Console URLs that are ranking for that topic that you extracted?
So what do you mean pulling URLs?
Well, you can imagine, like, if you had an H1 tag that was like, by IBM, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you use Search Console to check for the URLs ranking for that particular phrase, if there aren't any, then it would make sense that you would prioritize whatever URL that's going to find over any type of custom search.
Yeah, and especially if you were to normalize the URL, remove stop words, sort it, lematize it, and then do.
Oh, so you're saying using the actual text in the URL?
Well, it would just
Jay
say.
wants to have sex with the URL first.
It would just say that. It would just say that this is the topic, and oh, by the way, this or these 5 pages ranked for this topic or something similar over the last 6 months, and this one has the most impressions or clicks to it, so that's the one I'm going to match to it.
I mean, I thought about using text in the URL, but a lot of times that's just not as accurate.
Well, your H1, you're trying to pull.
Yeah, I'm saying
Oh,
you
pulling
look
the-
at H1 from the page, and you look in basically your queries in Search Console and see which pages actually had impressions for that query.
For that query, yeah.
Yeah, as an alternative to searching Google for that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely another good way you could do it,
Kind of
but
return the same result.
It could, yeah. I didn't even think about that, but that's
Well,
an
you
interesting way
maybe,
to look at it.
I mean, maybe, right? Because custom search is going to pull whatever they're showing you top for that particular moment. But like Search Console is going to show you based off of what's performing. So you can look at click-through rate. Like you can just pull in a couple of other qualifiers.
But what if you have 5 pages that swap all the time?
Which one has a better click-through rate than impression?
Exactly.
Randomized.
All of them are equal. Then it
I mean,
doesn't matter anymore.
There's always
You just pick one.
there's always a differentiator.
One to rule them all.
and this is also a lot easier to implement because a lot of those would require,
One in the list.
more advanced programming.
It's
But-
always the middle. Always the middle of the
See,
counting shall be true. So I got a question for you, James.
Yeah, what's up?
One of the things about Wayback Machine that makes me super nervous is I check for pages in there all the time, like historical pages, and it says that they're not indexed or they never crawled it.
Mhm.
So it makes me really nervous to use that as any sort of like reliable metric. Could you do something like I know IBM is really complicated their website, but let's say you had a simple website that had Google Analytics installed on it from day one from launch. Could you just simply go under the list of landing pages under like the behavior report and just go way back in time and see all the list of pages in there and use that to figure out what the 404 pages are now?
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I mean, if you have that data, that's a
'Cause that makes
great
this
option.
I definitely think this is like wonderful, but I worry that you're going to get orphan pages that aren't going to show up in here.
I think it depends on the size of the site too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely, especially early on.
And that was the main reason I use Google Search because it's less likely to show orphan pages. But,
Yeah, but I mean, just because archive doesn't pick up all the pages.
That's why I like
doesn't mean
these
the data's
things.
not-
Is because it like helps. Yeah, it
Yeah.
helps kind of flesh out and take things in new directions, which is super interesting. Because we have an addition of Search Console and we have an addition of
Yeah.
analytics, which are 2 ways to kind of make this or take this and have people try different things with it.
yeah.
Yeah, and I know that won't work in all circumstances because if you have many subdomains, you got to check 30 different GA accounts or
Yeah.
whatever it might be.
That's what I use to
Just a
justify
Yeah.
services. I mean, you have to pay $200
And yeah, this is kind of relating to what you were saying, but basically, you're going to have some pages that archive.org probably doesn't have, so it's definitely something you need to manually check, or at least, when you're tracking it all, make sure you mark the ones that don't have results and, check those and map those. So this is a basic overview of regex, since I'm talking about redirects. Is everyone here familiar with regular expressions? Who here has used them before? All right.
Who's great at them?
And I hate every regex tester never matches the actual script that I'm using.
Yeah, it's true. So these are just the very basics. It's basically a way to match certain characters in a URL and extract them and use them for the URL you're redirecting to. So for most redirects, they'll go in the htaccess file if it's Apache or server config file. Larger companies may have their own redirect engine or software for managing redirects. But I suggest keeping a master Excel spreadsheet of all of your redirects. It's a really good way to, make sure if your redirects get deleted or, if you need to change them in the future. It's a really easy way to map them out and make changes and have a backup. So writing rules, these are some of the default ways you can do it in Apache as well as Nginx. Those are the two most common that I've seen.
What's the 2 periods for?
So period is a single character. So the reason I did that at IBM, a lot of times we'll have like a country code,
Language code.
like a language code or a country
That's 2
code.
characters?
Yeah, dot is any single character. So if you want to match two single characters within a slash and move it somewhere else in the URL. Yeah.
Well, I'm used to the annotation where it's like dot and then the curly brace 2.
Right. Yeah.
And then curly brace, that's the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Just the first example I thought of. So the last thing you want to make sure you're doing is you're checking redirects. Obviously, it'd be ideal to check them before they go live as well as after they go live. So here are 2 great tools for checking them before they go live. Regex101.com is basically a tool where it helps you with writing regular expressions because you can, hover over and it'll show you what that actual regex does. And you can also type in URLs to check while you're doing it. And there's also a tool that you can just paste your htaccess file and paste some of the URLs you want to check against it. Yeah. So it's a pretty easy way to do it if you're just using an htaccess file.
On Twitter that I was going to have a tool that I use like every day for the rest of the year.
And this is it.
htaccess.
Maybe love that.
Yes, I think that's it.
It's your bay.
Me would love that. It's my bay.
So after your redirects are live, you want to check them because most of the time when I've implemented redirects, I messed something up along the way, whether it's a redirect loop or the systems don't loop. But even on smaller websites, you accidentally make a redirect loop because you messed up some regex somewhere. So one way you can do it, SEO tools for Excel, you can use a canonical function to check where your page is redirecting to, or you can use the status code. You can also use Screaming Frog, which will crawl all of your pages and show where they're going to. Those are 2 of the most common ways. And redirect loops. And you also want to check for not only the pages you're redirecting, but the pages you're not redirecting, because a lot of your redirect rules, especially if you're using regular expressions, will affect other URLs that you might not be thinking about. That's something a lot of people miss if they do redirects and it impacts other live pages on their site. So not only check the pages you're redirecting, but also those you aren't. So WordPress is one of the most used CMS systems. Yoast SEO Premium has some decent. I've honestly never used really Yoast SEO Premium. I looked at the features for both of these. Really? Yeah.
That's amazing.
The redirect stuff in Yoast is terrible. Everything else in Yoast is great.
Can you expand upon that?
Yeah, I mean, there's not any way to set up for like groupings. In redirection, you can disable and enable them without deleting them.
I mean, it's for like somebody that doesn't know shit about SEO to be able to go in and redirect a page.
My question
Redirection
is,
is
why are you
better.
also putting
Because
redirects on the
redirection
server and not the CDN?
Because client's gonna client, man.
Yeah.
Always the CDN.
I guess I won't get Yoast as a sponsor now, thanks.
He knows. I've already told him.
And I believe when I looked at both of these,
They're working on it. They know it sucks.
I believe both of these support regex, and they also have rules like if you delete a page, it'll automatically prompt you to redirect it somewhere else. So this is more for like a smaller site. If you want a better user experience for someone who's not really as familiar with editing the htaccess file or something like that, it's a real easy way to set up redirects and make it better than if they didn't do redirects. And redirection, this plugin supports Nginx, htaccess, so you can actually export your rules for Nginx, which has to go in the server config file. So if you're not as comfortable writing those rules, this is a great way to automatically export them. And
Redirection also logs all of the hits in WordPress that are 404, so you can export them and put it in a pivot
Yep.
account, and then you can see which
yeah, exactly,
in
integrates.
real time which pages are getting
yeah, integrates with Search Console, and it'll tell you the 404s, and then you can redirect them. So that's a pretty good way of being proactive with your redirects. And that's it. Any questions?
That's it? There was no thank you page or anything.
What's that?
There was no thank you page or anything.
Yeah, I should probably add that.
So how many pages have you redirected using this method?
Not a lot, because we don't have access to the API yet, so I've just been using the free version, which is like 100 a day. But
How many do you plan to redirect this year?
hundreds of thousands.
36,500.
How far
Yeah.
does your analytics account go back?
As far back as we realize.
Like 5 years?
GDPR.
10 years?
1 year.
Since we acquired
1
core
year.
metrics.
Huh?
Since we bought core metrics.
So, I mean, you could literally go back and pull like hundreds of thousands of URLs.
We only want the ones with links, though, which is where Ahrefs comes in.
Yeah, you just slap them through Ahrefs and see if there's anything like more than 2 follow referring domains, and then
I don't know if we'll go as low as 2.
I don't know.
I mean, IBM has enough properties that the number of Ahrefs is going to be at least 100 for every page editing. Wow.
I mean, at least like 3. I mean, in my history, it's like a huge curve where it goes 0, 1, 2, you know what I mean? Like the curve for like what actually has links is pretty steep, and it usually like transitions up at around 2 or 3.
Quick question for you. So you mentioned that a number of the pages that you're doing aren't necessarily pages that are 404s. Is this like, I'm thinking back, like 4 or 5 years when Panda first came out and everybody was like, take the cruft and redirect that to what's good. Is that kind of the application that you're seeing for the non-404s? Is there
So that's part of it. Part of it is just ownership of pages. There's still a lot of content that just was never deleted. So just finding that content and redirecting it. Yeah.
Basically, it costs more typically to get rid of it than it does to leave it live, so it gets left live.
So that is, interestingly enough, the really interesting thing there, because if you have, I'm serious, like if you have, like, let's say that you have 2 pages, and one is about blue balls, and one is about like
red ones?
Please say that. Why did I say that? All right. What is about?
What kind of website are you running?
Why did I say that? I don't know. What is about? I was like, simple term, and it
You can
turned out
still
to
save
be
this.
terrible. All right. One is about pink flashlights, and one is about like pink LED flashlights, right? So, I mean, could you look at and say, okay, this is about pink flashlights, and I have these 2 pages that are really similar in terms of a topic standpoint, but this one has an average ranking of, 3 or position of 3. This one has an average position of 7, right? Therefore, I'm going to redirect that to this page because it's still topically relevant, and the benefit of redirecting this page to that page is more than redirecting
Exactly.
the other page.
And the other issue that I come across a lot is incorrectly redirected pages. So it's also a good way to check, is this page actually going to the page that would be best for it, just by checking rankings.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Is that it, guys? No more questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, James. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
I had no idea. Thanks a lot. No, it's too much complicated. Again, and we will get that out there.
Okay, everybody, once is everybody here on Twitter? Yeah. Most part, maybe. Yeah. When that comes out, can y'all like kind of keep a lookout for it and help kind of share? Yeah. We want to get more
Report
people,
spam.
Thanks. Thank you.
not him, but if we want to get more people in the Raleigh community, and we're
Thanks everybody for